Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenmara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight is our series called Myth and Tarot, where I introduce you to, or go a little bit deeper than you may have already known about, a mythological creature and or being, and then we do a live tarot reading as if that creature or being is sitting directly in front of me. So it's kind of a fun way to broaden our horizons, maybe learn a little bit about some forgotten history that you may or may not have known about. And tonight I would like to introduce you to a giant from Greek mythology by the name of Geryon, or Geryon, depending on who's saying it. So here is one of the basic images that you'll see of Geryon. 2 legs and then extra upper body parts. And we'll get into why that is in just 1 second. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video if you enjoy this type of content, and comment and let me know what your thoughts are, whether you're watching this live or on replay, and we'll get started. So Geryon was the son of Chrysaor, and this is the one I struggle with. It's Kaliero. The Greeks had some awesome names for some things, and then they have this. They lived on the island of Etheria in the far western part of the Mediterranean. It is said that this land was beyond the edge of the known world, behind the setting sun. That's quite the distance if you really think about it. He was the grandson of Medusa because his mother, father, Chrysaor, sprang from Medusa's blood. And weirdly enough, this one is a little bit weird, he is the nephew of Pegasus, the flying horse. I love Greek myths family trees. There's a mouthful. They have 1,000 branches, but it's such a tangled mess you can never sort it all out. So there's that. Geryon is usually seen with 3 heads on his 1 set of shoulders. There are some sources that claim he was a triplet entity, meaning there was 3 of them, that they had one mind, kind of a thing, like telepathically connected. There is another that says he had 1 set of legs, which is this image, but 3 upper bodies sprouting from the waist. Another reference I found was that he had 1 head and 3 bodies. 1 head, 3 bodies. Could not find a good image of that. I'm really not sure what to do with that particular info, because it's an image I don't really want to think about, to be brutally honest with you. There are some stories that said he had 6 arms and 6 legs. Again, there are things in Greek myths that make no sense. Like this guy here is actually you can't quite see the legs, but there are 6 legs there, but you also have 6 arms. 2 arms are holding a spear, in the back up top there, and then the other 4 are holding lightning swords. In the form with the 6 arms and 6 legs, he also had wings, and the number varies. One reference said 1 set, so 2 wings. Another said 4 sets, which was 8 wings. Not exactly sure where all those wings fit. But to me, this was one of those, okay, ancient Greek writers, you can't put everything on one creature. What's next? His hair just happened to be snakes on top of all the rest of that? Not really, but I mean, seriously. There was a lot going on for Geryon. But the one thing that was a theme through all of the myths was he had immense strength. Strength that was unmatched amongst all mortals, and a fair amount of the immortals, the gods, as well. But for tonight's exploration, we're going to go with the concept of one primary body with 3 heads. You might hear me reference the 3 torsos as well, so that's kind of what we're going with. You can kind of think of it as Cerberus in human form. Speaking of puppies, Geryon had a dog who was the brother of Cerberus, and I was kind of excited when I found this out, because I was like, wait, Cerberus wasn't by himself, there was more? Yeah, Orthrus, this guy, he had 2 heads. He wasn't as cool as Cerberus with his 3. And I wouldn't be surprised if we dig around a little bit to find out that there was a 3rd dog in that litter, but it only had 1 head. My personal giggle when I was researching all of this, and I laughed a lot about it, was I bet this is where we get the snuggle bugs known as pitties. They were the first ones, and that was kind of like, we were looking for ferocious and we've got a cuddle monster. So then they made Orthrus, and it was like, we're getting there, not quite scary enough. And then they popped out Cerberus, and they were like, bingo, 3-headed but big bean mean dog. That's just my little opinion. So we're gonna hop back over to our giant that had 3 heads or 3 torsos or 3 somethings. Geryon was known in the ancient Greek myths as having a lot of cows. So many that even the other gods were even jealous of how much he had. It was said his fame was from his magnificent, was the word, red cattle. And the reason that they were stained red was the paint of the magical setting sun dyed their hair bright red. Not quite bright red. This is a red Angus from an extended family member, and I purposely hid the brand with a nice little sun. Kind of ties into the whole story. And yes, I'm a goofball, cheeseball, whatever, but that's why I do these things, because it's fun and it's educational at the same time, so why not enjoy it? Oh, and I just lost my place. Hercules, of course we have to bring this guy in. Growing up, Hercules was kind of a hero. The more I've learned about him, he's not, I wouldn't stick that title on him anymore. Just say that out loud. Hercules was tasked with labors because of a crime he committed against his family. We'll get into Hercules later. That's probably going to be multiple shows. There's a lot there. But he had a set of labors. Some say 12, some say 13. The 10th labor that was given to him by the gods and men was to steal Geryon's cows. There was a specific human that was very envious of Geryon's cows and prayed to the gods, and they were like, oh, this will be perfect. No one's been able to get cows away from Geryon. No one can even get to Geryon, so that'll be even better. We'll make Hercules do this. It's an impossible task. So Hercules was told to go get the cows and take them to Eurystheus. Like I said, some things in Greek myths, great. Other ones, no. Bunch of drama for Hercules. We'll get into that later. And he ended up with a gigantic golden cup. The story behind it is kind of weird. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But he ends up with this giant golden cup. And with this particular cup, it was so big, he could use it to sail to the island of Erythrea to get the cows. So he could actually sail beyond the setting sun with this thing. Again, the Greek myths were great. Once Hercules set foot on Erythrea, Orthrus, his beautiful 2-headed puppers here, attacked. Of course he would, defending his territory. And it was said that Hercules, big meanie, struck the poor pup down with a single blow from his club. course he would. Geryon's herder, this was a fun one trying to get it to say right. Eurytion went to stop Hercules. Hercules was like, oh heck no, and struck down Eurytion with the giant club. No more herder. Another herder, kind of a sub one, there was a name, but it was like the one time I saw the name was digging through some paperwork on it. Not unimportant herder, unfortunately, but he saw what was going on and took off to go tell Geryon at his estate. Geryon was livid. Obvious reasons. I mean, you just took out my dog and my top herder. Like, Anyway, for obvious reasons, he grabbed his 3 helmets, and it is said his 3 shields and 3 spears. Some stories said he had some swords mixed in with all that, but he grabbed his shields, his hats, and his helmets and his weapons. And then he went Hercules hunting. Again, justified. Things didn't go so well in any of the myths with Geryon. Being the 10th labor for Hercules, he had already killed the Hydra. Task number 2, we talked about the Hydra a while back. And had some of those blood-tipped arrows with him. It was one of these arrows that flew past Geryon's defenses, which were impressive. 6 arms, I mean, think about it. And it got under his helmet and pierced his skull. The last moments of Geryon in the myths would have been excruciating. The poisonous Hydra blood would cause a lot of pain, before finally dissolving Geryon's life. There were some very interesting poetic analogies. One that as the arrow pierced the skull, the giant Geryon's head lulled as a wilting flower upon its shoulders, and there was some interesting poetry actually making Geryon the victim, which in this situation he hadn't done anything. He was existing on an island so far away from Greece you technically couldn't get to it without magic. He really wasn't hurting anybody, so he technically was the victim in this one. And that's kind of where a lot of the old myths end. But was this the end for Geryon? No, actually. He shows back up. Of course he does. In this, I love this book. Dante's epic poem, The Inferno, Book 1. Not the rest. I mean, the whole trilogy is great. Book 1, to me, has the best poetry and has the most interesting myths tied into it. So Geryon is the monster between the realms of 7 and 8. He is the guide and transport, so to speak, to the realm of fraud. Not quite sure why they stuck him there, but, you know, there we're at. So he lives between the 7th and 8th circles of hell. It is said he lives in a giant cave just under the 7th circle, and when called, Dante and, where's his name? Virgil will call Geryon to them in the 7th realm, and he would take them from the 7th circle of hell down to the 8th circle of hell. To get to the 8th circle, they would travel in descending circles, you know, kind of spiraling down, around the great Phlegethon waterfall, which was basically blood, bile, and fire. Beautiful picture, right? Down into the darkness of fraud in the 8th circle of hell. Now, Geryon, in this particular description, Dante had a little bit of fun describing him. He showed Geryon as a great beast of a monster with dragon wings, the paws of, and this is where we get into some interesting translation hiccups, or definition hiccups. He either had the paws of a bear or a lion. They didn't specify in the references, and I can't remember. It's been so long since I read The Inferno. I did enjoy it, I just haven't read it in a while. But he had the body of a Werverin. Now, Werverin is a form of dragon, but it's the ones that doesn't have back legs. They only have the front legs, but they do have wings, and they can fly around a little bit, but it goes from like monstrous head, dragon wings and arms, to great big long coiling tail. This particular version, though, because like I said, Dante had some fun with this, has Geryon having a scorpion tail and a sting of the most painful fire from scorpion. So he made him fit his description in hell, basically. And he was described as having an honest man's face, which, when you look at some of the thoughts about this, it basically meant it was the face of an innocent, which is a little bit weird when you think that he lived between the realms of 7 and 8 circles of hell, going into fraud. Why would he have an honest face? Because he was kind of an evil person, and at that level, what was inside projected out. Of course, Geryon wasn't evil, so it could be that. Who knows? I wasn't there, and Dante has since passed. But there are some other thoughts in other people's theories that the face of Geryon in that realm could have been an eagle, a ram, a lion, or a bull. Again, some very interesting concepts as to what Geryon would have looked like as the transport between the 7th and 8th circles of hell. But, you know, that's how they made monsters monstrous. That's what kept us, up at night. It's why we dig into this stuff, is because sometimes you want that little bit of fear to realize, yeah, I'm really glad that stuff doesn't really exist. Or does it? Sounds like a lot of fun, right? The myths of Geryon didn't end with the Greeks. He is also linked to the founding of Spain and Portugal. In this lore, Geryon was an inhabitant of the Iberian Peninsula, but those who live in the area didn't like that association. One friar in particular, I believe his name was Bernardo, considered this story vile, and the beast, Geryon, was an invader sent by the evil devil to rule the innocents of the land and hold dominion and abuse the populace and... Settle down there, Cupcake. There are some thoughts, though, that because of Hercules' axe, and when, like, the pillars of Hercules, the two guideposts into the Greek world, that Geryon lived just outside of that, and that would have put him, give or take, around the Iberian Peninsula, and the setting sun from Greece would have been in the west, this direction as well. So there is some legend or lore that ties that to it. Going along with that, Geryon in parts of Italy is worshipped as a deity, or was, not so much anymore, too many Catholics, but back in the day, there was actually temples built to Geryon, because after he passed, he actually took a place amongst the stars. Hera was furious about this. I mean, she hated Hercules, but this made her mad too. Everything made Hera mad. But other deities decided to raise him up and stick him into the stars, and I think he was part of the Orion constellation. I'd have to look again. But there's a that ties him to Taurus, the bull, but also to one of the Canis Major and Canis Minor, which would have been Orthrus. So you've got a lot going on in the stars around Orion, and that's kind of where some of the lore says that he was put was Orion. So there's some astrology for you. But the reason that they kind of worshipped him as a deity is one of the legends, after Hercules stole his cattle, finally got him back onto the mainland. One of the bulls, Taurus, escaped Hercules. Of course, Hera had something to do with that. She was an evil, evil, evil goddess in a lot of ways. But one of the bulls escaped and ended up on Italy, the peninsula. One of the theories is Italy's name actually comes from a ancient Latin term for bull, which was Italiana or something. I'm really bad with Latin, but it was the root of, or the long form version of Italy. So there is a little bit of connection to Geryon and how Italy shows up into the world. And there were temples. Back to the temples. One temple was in the area of Patavium, and the other was Agrium, close to Sicily. Those two temples were kind of the founding area temples, bringing the Greek myths into the Italian area. Again, there was some interesting stuff that went on with some of these ancient Greek stories and ideas. Interestingly enough, that's all that's really talked about for Geryon. I dug, and I dug, and I dug. I'm like, there's got to be something more about this particular being. No. That's it. They're just, and that kind of surprised me in a couple of ways, because the Hydra and some of the other creatures that were in Hercules' impossible challenges or labors, a lot of them had massive, expansive histories. Most of them were kind of causing chaos in the human world or attacking Olympus itself, so that maybe that was why they were more important. Geryon was just living on an island out away from everybody, like away from everybody. He had some cool cows, and there was a greedy human that wanted those cows. There were some images I found on, I think, DeviantArt. So if you're interested, go look up Geryon's cows on DeviantArt, because there's some cool stuff there. That had the cows, beautiful, beautiful cows, long hair and horns and all that stuff. But they were also about 12 feet tall. So they have little human and then giant cow, which is actually kind of cool when you think about it, because that implies that Geryon's cows were not just magnificent looking, beautiful creatures, but they were also huge, which would give you a little bit more reason as to why that king was like, please, deities, send me giant cows. Those would be beautiful. I want them. They're, fill in the blank. Can make my status look great, or who knows what else. The Greeks had a lot of amorous that they tied into everything. So who knows why he wanted gigantic cows. But there was some of that. Anywho, we are now about to head into our tarot section, where we do a reading as if Geryon is sitting across my very small desk from me, and we will see if Geryon was sitting here today in this particular now moment, what would be his tarot reading. So I actually have all of my stuff ready today. Mark that on the calendar. It's been a minute. We will start off with the significator, and this particular deck, if you're interested, is linked in the description below. It's an affiliate link, so when you click through that, it does help support the channel. And I also, because any of the ferrymen between the realms of hell, you had to pay a price for it. I found a copper coin for Geryon, and I put that in the link as well, because it just looks cool, and it has a three-headed warrior on it. Just kind of something fun if you're interested. But Geryon's significator card, this is Geryon in this moment, is the King of Chalices. He's been there, he's done that, he's conquered his demons, and now what's he supposed to do? He sits amongst the stars, amongst the deities that are enshrined in our constellations, but he's already done everything. He's emotionally very stable, but he was always that way. I mean, when you read through his history, his anger came from Hercules taking out his dog. had nothing to do with anything else. Hercules just, go do your thing over there, leave me alone. So he really was the king of his domain. The chalices also imply that he was the king, that he probably still is the king of his island. So he's just doing his thing, that, island by himself. He has the people who he wants around him, and that's pretty much where he's at right now as far as in this moment. The things that are crossing him, the obstacles, I guess you could say, is the Six of Chalices. So there's a little bit of duality here, but it's the energy of Gemini, and I'm not sure why they're saying that. It's the twins energy, which is interesting because water tends to work really well with air, but the Gemini energy is two-faced. It can be really sweet, or it can be really not. And so that Gemini energy is what's crossing him. So he's been there, he's done that, he's in control of his emotions. But the Six of Chalices is saying what's coming in is someone who is nice to his face but could possibly stab him in the back, and he knows this. That's the part that I'm getting. Geryon already knows what this obstacle is, and it's just like, are you serious? Again, been there, done that. What are you doing? Go. The higher self influences his conscience, so to speak, is the Nine of Chalices. He knows the right thing to do. Geryon is not stupid. He had a very interesting bloodline. He comes from very powerful deity stock. So he knows the right things to do, and he tends to live his life by that code. So his higher self, his higher influences are actually positive. And they're also saying that it's some of the more positive deities. So deities like Demeter and they're saying Diana. Not sure why, a virgin huntress. But it could be she was the one that helped teach him as he was growing up how to be a warrior. So you've got that higher conscience coming in. His lower self, his shadow, is the Six of Wands. So you've got that fire energy. Fire is total polar opposite of water. So when you have the Six of Wands, you've got this contrary energy, these untamed passions, so to speak, that are coming forward. But it's the passion of, oh, it's okay, come over here and try this. It is the seductive innocence. Don't be fooled, and Geryon's not. His shadow is really not the greatest aspect. Those subconscious, those deeper, so to speak, urges are really stepping forward, and they're trying to tease him, and he's like, are you kidding me? Go away. But he's already conquered them, so they're flaring up, but it's more he's observing, like, oh, you're here again. Okay. Why? Because he doesn't forget his past. Things happen for a reason, but he's still stuck with that information. So his immediate history, and now that he's part of the stars, we're going to say he's an immortal, so we're going 200 years back. So his immediate past is the Two of Chalices. He's had an interesting relationship. Before I do that, okay. Some of the pictures on this deck I have to edit with coverage. His history has been in a relationship. They're not saying who the relationship was. It could have been just a friendship with somebody, but the Two of Chalices imply an emotional or spiritual connection. So in the last 200 years, he's actually found peace, and he's actually been able to bond with something that's at least akin to him, so possibly a giantess of some form. But he's found solitude, or not solitude, he's found peace, we'll just stick with that word, in the last 200 years, which is great because he had peace. Hercules showed up, it wasn't so peaceful anymore, but at least in the last little while he's been able to regain that peace, that comfort, that quiet life with a partner. His immediate future is the Ten of Swords. There's a cutting away of illusions. So there's some things that he's not been acknowledging, but his immediate future, the next 200 years, he's not going to be able to hide from them. This is a period of the last of the things that he's been trying to ignore, probably some of these beautiful shadows, have to be dealt with. He has got to to be able to have his past carry into his future, he's going to have to shave away, cut out the past that no longer works for him, the past that has the potential to poison his future. So the Ten of Swords is saying you still are working with some air energy here, and so it's time to not lie to yourself, be upfront and honest, but cut away. Not always the most comfortable thing, but with the Ten of Swords, it's something that needs to be done. It's something that he has full ability to do, and the next 200 years he's not going to have the option to ignore it. It's going to happen one way or another. So where he is at in this moment for his attitude. Now, we've been talking about some basically where he's at overall, but now we're really about where is his mindset. What is he looking at and how is he feeling in this moment? And that is the King of Swords. I have to edit this little one. So he has done a lot of clearing out of these historical thoughts, these unpleasant things that weren't really working for him, but he still has a little bit more work to do. And in his mind, the Ten of Swords is saying, you're not done yet. In his mind, he's already done all that. He doesn't have anything else to clear out. He is good. He is taken care of. There's nothing more he has to do. Ten of Swords in his immediate future is like, listen here, son. Sit down. We have some chatting to do because you're not done yet. He can jump up and down and say King of Swords all day long. I've done all of it. I'm done. She's just going to keep saying, sorry, buddy, but you're not. That's why I'm upset, is I don't want to have to do this. But you have to listen. Things are changing. And you still have a couple of things to work through. Kind of like most of us humans, running around here. Oh no, I've dealt with all of that. Oh nay. You have dealt with this much of it. Now it's time to go deeper. And that's what the Ten of Swords is saying. His immediate environment, so this is where he's at right now. As I've said before, he's currently sitting amongst the stars. But let's see what the cards have to say. It is the Queen of Swords. He's sitting in knowledge. He's sitting in wisdom. He's tied himself to a position of authority in that aspect, which kind of ties him to the stars, especially if we're talking Orion, because that is one of the constellations of wisdom and of knowledge. So his current environment, where he's like physically at, is in the, like, he really is there. He's in a position of authority over his knowledge and over his history and his future. He's had to conquer some quote-unquote demons, Hercules, but he's now in a position where he can actually be his own authority figure. Still has some things to learn, but he's able to exist in that position and not have to worry about the continual battles and fighting and blah, blah, blah going forward. So, his hopes and fears. His hopes and fears is the Two of Wands, back with that fire, but this is a more innocent aspect of fire. His hopes and the hope is that everything will settle down, that the future, this Two of Cups, Two of Chalices, will continue forward. His hope is, I'm getting the impression of naivety, of innocence, that he is like, I've already dealt with enough garbage. His hope is that fragile hope of pushing forward, like, I want this to be more positive and more fruitful, where people can learn from how I have dealt with things. His fear as of being forgotten, which I don't think that will happen as long as we keep reading, because he does show up in a lot of the old stuff, but the base level of his story is all the same. There's not a lot of new stuff about Geryon, which personally I think we could just flesh out some of his stories a little bit. They've done it with the Percy Jackson series for kids or teens, has fleshed out a lot of the ancient Greek myths, but there's so many more out there to bring to life, and Geryon would be a good one. And that's where his fear is he doesn't want to be forgotten. He doesn't want to be remembered only as some grotesque monster that Hercules had to kill because he was doing something bad. He really wasn't. He was on an island by himself, taking care of his cattle with a dog. He wasn't terrorizing anybody. He was staying away from everybody. So there's some lessons to be learned on that too. The overall outcome for this reading is the Three of Swords. There's that theory of being forgotten, and there is an aspect of Geryon being forgotten. The Three of Swords is saying, like, the sitting down, we'll say that one's Geryon. He's like, please don't forget me. And the one standing up is us in the modern time. You're just not an interesting person, Geryon. You just don't have a lot to tell us. Your story's really short. We're just not into it. But the overall outcome of this is, long, short, how big the story is irrelevant. The important part is there's a story there. Is it a story you can learn from? Is it a story that could be fleshed out, a little bit more depth added to it? Yeah, a couple things like that. So overall, I feel like Geryon is in a pretty good spot. He's at least got a positive history. Some good things are going on there. Moving forward, he's also got some good things coming in, but a lot of it is us not forgetting that he existed in the first place. And that's, I don't know why, they keep coming back to bringing his story forward, adding it or enhancing it. Don't bring modern day thoughts into it though. Take it for what it is and expand on that from the aspect of the ancient Greeks, not us today. I mean, he might eventually guide that into the story, but really there's not much out there about Geryon. I had to dig a lot to get what we talked about today, and then also, just out of sheer curiosity, I started looking into literature, because usually you can find some kind of a book about the ancient Greeks. Geryon is a footnote in most of them. There's not a lot there. Why? I mean, oh yeah, Hercules killed him. Okay, well, Hercules, whoop-de-doo. But there's nothing on some of these less toxic characters. There's a whole bunch on the Hydra. I mean, the Hydra shows up in all sorts of horror films. But Geryon? One book, Dante's Inferno, which also is a video game and a movie, which are pretty cool. But that's about it for Geryon. So anyway, if you know of other places you can find him, please let me know in the comments. Let us all know in the comments down below. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. We will be showing up a video tomorrow, which is Tuesday the 26th. And other than that, I will see you guys later. Have a great rest of your week. And don't forget the ancient myths. That's the most important part.